This way. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday night Torah Parsha class. Maybe we could add some more words for next week. I'm Rabbi Chernitsky, director of Chabad Newfoundland. We're going to explore the depths of the Parsha. We're going to go swimming in the deep sea ocean of the Torah. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayeschanan. What stands out of the Parsha is, of course, my name is in it, but in the name, but also that there's the repetition of the 10 commandments. We're now in the book of Deuteronomy, with the second to the book of Deuteronomy, and so again, that Moses repeating everything that was said with a few of his changes or emphasis is the better word, which of course was also said with divine prophecy. Moses was such a powerful, big prophet that he what he said was exactly what God wanted him to say. Just closing windows here so that we don't lose the camera. And we're going to speak about one of the 10 commandments, commandment number 5, honoring your parents. Thou shalt honor your parents, the change, the difference between what it says in our parsha and what it said earlier on in the book of Exodus, the parsha of Israel, when we were first introduced to the 10 commandments and what's known as Maimad Har Sinai, and the Jews standing on Mount Sinai. And it's a topic that's not easy. It affects the ego. A lot of us struggle with this mitzvah of honoring the parents because of our egos. And this is a unique time. We just came from Tisha B'Av last night, the 9th of Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, commemorating the destruction of the first temple and second temple in Jerusalem 1,000 years ago. It has become a catch-all for Jewish calamities that have happened since, some of them on the very date, the 9th day of Av, some of them not, especially this year, of course, a very emotional, powerful day. But we hope and pray that very soon we will be in the era of Mashiach. Amen. So continue with the class. We are in a bit of a special time. In Israel, it's a bit of a tense time. Everybody's waiting to see who's going to attack first, Iran or Israel. People are a bit of an edge. And sometimes when we're at that stage, we're more open, more receptive to hearing, to absorbing, to hearing a new idea, becoming to an idea that we wouldn't be open to otherwise. So, as I said, today's topic is the mitzvah of honoring parents. 10 Commandments, commandment number 5. There's a few challenges that people have with this mitzvah. Challenge number 1. That people forget, we tend to forget what others did for us in the past. We are not very good at acknowledging Hakaras HaTov or on showing or gratitude for things that were done in the past. The parents that brought us into the world, that fed us, that diapered us, that raised us. You say, hey, now I'm, 15, 18, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. And, it's been a while since I was a little baby. It's a while since my parents took care of me. So what do I owe them, right? What's this debt that I carry with me that I need to honor my parents? Connected with that, number 2, challenge number 2, is that we don't want to owe anything. It has to do with the ego. We want to be able to do what we want. We don't want to feel guilty. We don't want to feel obligated that we owe somebody something. We want to do what we want. We want to be able to go on vacation, not have to think about anybody else besides our immediate family. And it's tough to honor the parents, especially when they get older. They need more help, more assistance. You never know when they're gonna call that they need something. And why is it so hard to be there for them? Because to be there for them when they need us means to acknowledge that we owe them something. It's to acknowledge that they did something for us that essentially we can never repay. One second. And importantly, the mitzvah of honoring the parents shouldn't be that the parent, mother or father, walks away with this feeling that that they are putting us out. We need to go out of our way to honor them, to assist them, to help them, to take them from one place to the other, whatever it is. The idea what to do the mitzvah is that they should feel, and we could even verbalize this, that we, the children, are so lucky that we got to do this mitzvah. Thank you for the honor. Thank you for the privilege that I got to help you. That's the best way to do this mitzvah. There's a beautiful story that took place during that first Pesach Seder, Passover Seder of COVID in 2020. If you remember those difficult days, that's April 2020. And an old Bobby, an old grandmother who was already widowed and was used to having the family over for the Passover Seder with her many children and grandchildren. It was always quite an event, very beautiful, very loud, very happening. And they used to be the highlight of her year. Of course, COVID came around, there's lockdowns, social distancing. They couldn't do the Seder together. So she felt really, really sad and depressed. She's going to feel her loneliness in a real deep way. But the day before the Seder, her neighbors called her, a young family, and they said, none of us are allowed to have guests, but why don't you sit close to the window? We'll sit close to our window, and we'll share the Seder in the way. We'll sing songs together. We'll read through the Haggadah, the text that we read on Pesach together. And she said, yeah, sure. This lady's son calls her during the intermediary days of Passover and says, hi, Mom, how was the Seder? And she says, whoa, Nisei Nisei, miracle of miracles. It was amazing. This guy, the neighbor, he led the Seder the same way your father used to. He told the same jokes. He sang the same Vertelach. He said the same explanations on the Haggadah. It was amazing. It was so delicious. So the son says, Mom, I need to tell you something. You have no idea the kind of neighbor that you have. Before Passover, he gave us a call and he said, please tell me how your father used to conduct the Seder. And he took notes and he delivered it naturally, just for you to feel comfortable. That encapsulates, this story encapsulates how we should all do the mitzvah of kibud of aim, honoring the parents. Not that they should feel that they're a burden and we're going out on a limb just to do whatever it is for them, but the opposite. They should feel that it's our biggest pleasure, it's our biggest merit and honor, privilege to be able to do this. So that's number one. How to honor mother and father. They shouldn't feel needy. They shouldn't feel like they are at this stage in life that they're perhaps useless. It sounds a bit extreme, but they shouldn't feel that now they changed gears. They're in this stage when they can't provide anymore. Now they're only receiving. It's very, very hard for a person to go through that. So we don't want to feel needy. And, nothing brings a parent's morale down. It's embarrassing. It's degrading to have to receive from the children. The parent that's used to give to the children, not to receive, is very, very difficult. And even just saying the words, thank you for giving the opportunity, actually verbalizing it's very powerful, goes a long way. And we know that everything that we show our children will come back to us when our children see that we honor our parents, we take care of them with gusto, with a zest, with a willingness, even when it's hard. Of course, God willing, they will reciprocate, they will emulate that and do that when we are in the position that we need that. So the Gemara says this in source number 1, using these great platforms. I don't know how to show the sources on the screen. You'll forgive me, but I'm going to try to read it from the computer. To open. Here. So the Gemara says in Kiddushin, Daf Lamed Aleph, an interesting thing. The Gemara says, Yishmaichi le'oviv pisi oini v'tordoi min ha'olam v'yesh matchine b'reichayim u'mavir lechayolam habo. It says that there could be a person that feeds his parents fattened ducks, which I guess it's a big delicacy, but this person is punished, and that is a person who makes his father work at a mill, but inherits the world to come because of it. Why? Because it all depends on the context, right? Imagine, what the Talmud says is, imagine that you make for your father a very delicious supper, brisket, potatoes, maybe also some broccoli, with the drinks he likes to drink, delicious. And then when you're eating, your father says, "Oh, son, where do you get the brisket?" And you say, "Oh, who cares? Well, stop asking me questions. Just enjoy your food." That's a nice way to talk. So the son who has all the trappings, right? So he's doing all the right things, but with the wrong attitude, the Gemara says that's a terrible thing. But there could be a son who has limited means, who's not in a good position, but it's the biggest joy for him to provide for his parents. This person gets to go to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, after life in this world, because it's all about how we do it. Some say this is an interesting idea. Some say, why is it so difficult for us, counterintuitive against our nature, to do the mitzvah, to honor our parents? Some explain that we all come from Adam and Eve, Adam Arishon, the first man, and Adam Arishon, he didn't have parents. God created him, so we don't have in our genes or DNA this concept of turning back and giving thanks to those that raised us, because Adam didn't have that. That's one explanation why we often struggle with that. And there's interesting questions that were asked in recent times of great rabbis concerning the mitzvah of honoring parents. Some of them are difficult questions. The situations are tough and not pleasant, but from the very tough, even extreme questions, that's how we can get a better idea of what exactly does it entail to honor the parents, but more importantly, really, what's the foundation? What's the reason that the Torah tells us, Hashem told us to honor our parents? Right? The Torah doesn't give a reason. The Torah just says to do it. And we're promised a reward, a long life. We'll speak about that later on, why that is. But the great authorities do tell us the reason why, and we're going to get to that very soon. Sometimes there are fights between parents and children. Sometimes you have a child that became religious, family's not religious, and questions come up. Source number 2. I have it here. I'm zooming in. Sorry, source number 1, the Rishon LeZion. Is there a mitzvah to honor parents who don't keep Shabbos? And besides that, they don't show appreciation for the path of life that the child chose. So that's a question. Child became religious, families are religious. Does the child have to honor his parents? Now, a different question, more difficult, more serious. From the answer was written by Rav Yitzchak Silverstein. So it says a student asked him that the student is going through psychological treatment for depression and anxiety, social anxiety. And she told the student told the therapist that the father cruelly offended her, and she developed guilt upon herself, that she feels that she's the one who made him angry, and she brought upon herself all the it doesn't say exactly what the father did to her. And the student says that she has become anorexic, feeling that she's rectifying, causing her father distress. So the psychological treatment she's going through is to show her that she is not the aggressor, she's the victim. And to address the feelings of anger towards her father instead of toward herself. So is that allowed? Is she allowed, the student, allowed to continue the treatment that will help her lead a healthier life while causing her to hate her father and create that separation between her and her father? Does that does that fit within the obligation to honor the parents or not? This is a very serious question. Um, so that's, yeah. Okay. There were two questions there in the original text, but just simplified it. So the question that we have is that the father or mother not being religious or not acting properly, does that annul the obligation for a child to show their gratitude and do the mitzvah, the commandment of honoring parents? Yes or no? That is the question. Um, okay. To answer this question, Moses says in our parsha, when repeating Ten Commandments, he adds 4 words which do not appear when the Ten Commandments were first told to us in the parsha of Yisro in the book of Exodus. What are the 4 words? It says you should honor your mother and father. That's the same as in Parshas Yisro. Ka'asher tzivcha Hashem Elokecha. Those are the extra 4 words in Hebrew, just like God your Lord has commanded. What does it mean? These 4 words, just 4 words, teach us that the obligation for a Jew to honor his parents goes way beyond showing gratitude. It's a lot more than hakaras hatoiv, as known in Hebrew. It's a lot more than being grateful, being thankful, showing gratitude, appreciation for everything our parents did. A lot more than that. Rashi says, what does it mean, like the Lord your God has commanded you? Rashi tells us, because even before the Torah was officially given on Mount Sinai, right after the Jews left Egypt, in the place called Mara, bitterness, Moses taught the Jewish people 3 mitzvahs, 3 commandments about Shabbat, about Kibbutz Aim, and Paraduma. That's what it means. Like God commanded you way back when, even before Parshas Yisro, even before Torah was given. Why? Why does he have to connect it to that? Seemingly, the being by Mount Sinai, hearing Ten Commandments, is a lot more powerful. Why would you connect now Ten Commandments to something happening before the Ten Commandments were given? Seems to minimize the Ten Commandments, right? To cheapen them. The Ksav Sofer, the son of the Chasam Sofer, Rabbi Moshe Sofer, so his son writes a beautiful thing. Let's see if we have it here in the sources to read it from inside the text. Parshas Yisro. Okay, somewhere here in the sources. So I'm going to say it outside. What the Ksav Sofer says, it's so delicious. He says that we were taught the mitzvah, the commandment to honor the parents, in Mara, even before the Ten Commandments were given. Why? Because there was a time where the parents did not provide anything to the children. God was providing the Jewish people with everything, with protection from the heat, protection from the wind, with food, with water, shelter. Every single thing came from God. Nothing came from the parents. Aye, but still, God commanded the Jewish people to honor the parents. And you see why? Because it has nothing to do with what the parents do or not do. Regardless of how good or, God forbid, not good the parents are, there is still an obligation to honor the parents, which should not be misconstrued and misunderstood as thinking that, God forbid, in the cases of abuse of any kind, whether it's physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, that doesn't mean that the child has to stay in that relationship. Not at all. But it just means that the child is not allowed to do things to the parent. That's what that means. Okay? So back to the class. Why were we told in Mara about kibbud av v'em, honoring the parents, specifically at that time when the parents were not doing anything for the children because God was taking care of all their needs, to show that the obligation to honor the parents has nothing to do with what the parents do to the child or not, has nothing to do with showing gratitude. It goes way beyond that. It's an intrinsic obligation to honor them. Why? Because they brought us into the world, period, full stop. So these are the two ideas that we have. There's what seems to be the most basic idea we said is showing gratitude. The parents brought us into, raised us, diapered us, fed us, gave us shelter, and so on and so forth. But more fundamentally, it's just because they gave birth to us, they brought us into the world, and became partners with God in creation. Right? The Talmud says the three partners in creation: God, Mother, and Father. And that's what it is. So we said at the beginning of the class that there's a number of changes, number of differences in the way Moses presents things here in Deuteronomy than earlier in the Torah. And all of them, again, with divine inspiration. There's a reason for them. It's not a mistake, God forbid. And there are 10 changes that the Kli Yakar, the famous commentator Kli Yakar, who lived in the 1500s, 16th century, points out between the Ten Commandments as presented in our Parsha of Eschanan and the Ten Commandments the way they were presented in the Parsha of Yisro in the book of Exodus. So we're not going to go through all of them, but there's a difference between how the mitzvah to keep Shabbat is presented, the mitzvah that we're speaking about, honoring parents, mitzvah not to covet, not to desire for someone else has, and there's one answer that answers them all. And the difference between the mitzvah of honoring parents in our parsha and the mitzvah of honoring parents in Parshas Yisro is about the reward. It says here, it says in both, leman yarichun yamecha, for so that your days will be lengthened, you're going to live a long life. But in our parsha adds, uleman yitavloch, and so it should be good for you, which means in the world to come, not in this world, in the world to come. So the Kli Yakar answers all of the questions with one answer. We'll get to that soon. Before, why is it that specifically this mitzvah of honoring parents, God promises a long life? There's other wonderful mitzvot, but there's no promise of long life. Keeping Shabbat doesn't say you're going to get a long life. Eating kosher doesn't say you're going to get a long life. But honoring parents is one of those mitzvot that says explicitly in the Torah, the reward is living a long life. Why? So, simply put, touching on a point we mentioned earlier, what you give is what you get. That by your children, our children, seeing how we treat our parents, respect them, assist to them, take care of them, they will do that for us. We'll be able to live a long and happy life with everything that we need. Another explanation that's given is that God will give us back the time that we spent honoring parents, because, as many of you know, especially as parents get older, God willing, and they need more help, it's very time consuming. Starts early, could end late, there are no set hours. So God is telling us, all the hours you're going to put in, don't worry, you're not going to lose out on anything. You're going to get them back. I'm going to give them back to you. You're going to live a long life. Number 3, and this is not an actual answer, this is more of a joke on the lighter side, shared by Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu of blessed memory. And he said that the long life, in the words of the Torah, arichus yomim, literally long days. He said that you need some person needs to wake up early to help his parents, and so when he wakes up earlier than usual, he ends up having a longer day, and that's the fulfillment of having longer days. He used to say with a smile. So again, the Kli Yakar answers all of the questions about the difference between the 10 Commandments presented by Moses here in this parsha and the way we heard them straight from God in the parsha of Israel. And he says the answer is that the first commandments were universal, meant for all of humanity. As we know that God, Talmud tells us that God went to all the different nations offering them the Torah, and they rejected except for the Jews. Each nation for a different reason. But the second commandments, the second set of tablets, just for the Jewish people. So they're more strict. There's a higher bar for the Jewish people. And therefore, when it comes to Shabbat, for example, it doesn't just say to remember, Sachar, it says Shamor, to keep that all the things that you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. When it comes to our mitzvah of honoring parents, the Torah speaks about the reward in the world to come, which is mainly relevant to the Jewish people. Now, we saw earlier in the Torah, already in the book of Genesis, before there was any talk about a mitzvah of honoring parents, we saw people honoring parents. If we want to say that Abraham was the first Jew, even before Abraham, we saw that the sons of Noah, right? Shem and Yefes, not Ham, the third one, but Shem and Yefes, the two other ones, that they honored Noah, didn't want to see him undressed, they covered him up with a blanket. And then later on, Esav, the firstborn of Isaac and Rebekah, Yitzchak and Rivka, also he went out of his way to honor his father. He happened to lie. He happened to not be the most moral and ethical person, but Kibbud Av, like honoring his father, he was there. He was the poster boy for that. So we see that just it's part of being a mensch, like just being a human being. We want to reciprocate, right? The parents did so much for us. A healthy person will want to give back. Okay. There's a cute story. One of these, they get in an email once in a while that somebody's taking care of his elderly father. The son reading a newspaper. Elderly father is sitting in a wheelchair, looking at the window. So the elderly father says, "Son, what is that?" Son looks up from the newspaper, says, "That's a bird." A few minutes later, same thing. The father says, "Son, what is that out the window?" The son says, "That's a bird. It's just flying around from tree to tree." A few minutes later, again, the elderly father asks, "Son, what is that?" And the son gets upset, says, "Don't you see that I'm reading the newspaper? I already told you it's a bird." The elderly father goes to his room and comes back with a journal, with a diary. And he shows his son they had written an entry when his son was 2 years old that today we went out to the garden and my son asked me, "Dad, what is that?" And I said, "That's a bird." Then he asked me again, "What is that?" And I said, "That's a bird." And then he asked me again, "What is that?" And I said, "It's a bird." So you get the point. The point is that one day the wheel of fortune is going to turn and we're going to be in the receiving end. But God demands a lot more from a Jew. Has to be a lot more than just reciprocity and showing gratefulness and appreciation. Why? Because having a child is a miracle. It goes against everything that we're used to, because every single thing in this world that we relate to is hoive v'nifsad in Hebrew. It deteriorates. It doesn't last forever. It has an expiry date. Doesn't matter what it is. Even the latest iPhone, it's going to come a time when it's going to become obsolete, kaput, right? But creating a life by having a child, also in Hasidic thought, it's brought down that planting is a similar thing. Creating life is against everything that we used to. It's the opposite. It's starting something new. There's nothing like it. And since our parents became partners with God in doing that, we have an eternal intrinsic obligation to honor them regardless of anything they did or did not do for us. Excuse me. Taking a drink. Okay. The Talmud tells us a few interesting stories about a person who's not Jewish named Dama ben Nesina. And he is mentioned in relation to his great commitment to honor his father. There's a number of different stories. One of the stories the Talmud shares is that the Chachamim, the sages, came from Jerusalem to buy one of the stones, one of the stones needed for the Choshen, for the breastplate used by the Kohen Gadol, the chief priest, I guess you say in English, for the service in the temple. He has to have the clothing, had to have all the requirements. One of the things the Torah says he has to have 12 stones. So these Dama ben Nesina, they had the right stone. It was hard to find, and they had it. So the sages came and they said, okay, we understand you have the stone. We are willing to pay X price, very high. And Dama ben Nesina said, I'm very sorry, but the keys to the safe where we keep the stone are under my father's pillow. My father's resting. I can't wake. I'm not gonna wake. I can't wake him up. So the rabbis offered a higher price, and he said he refused. He said he didn't want to make money from not honoring his father. And so they waited, and then his father woke up, and then he was able to bring down the stone. And the rabbis paid him the higher price. And he said, no, he returned the extra money. He said, I'm not going to make any money out of, honoring my father. He took the original amount that was set. Talmud says that God rewarded this Dama ben Nesina by sending him a red heifer, paraduma, which then also the sages purchased from him, necessary for the purification process of somebody that's Tomei Mace, somebody that became impure through contact with a dead body. So the Hasidic masters ask, why would God send him a red heifer? Of course, they made money out of it. If God wants to reward him, let the guy win the lottery. Money could come down from heaven, whatever. Why the red heifer? Says the Sfas Emes, it's either Sfas Emes or Chudei. They say God is sending him a message. When this person who was not exposed to the Torah, who is not obligated by the Torah, not Jewish, he honored his father in such a way, it caused a commotion in heaven. Says the Jewish people who have a mitzvah commandment to honor their mother and father, they are not keeping it at this level. So to settle the commotion, God sent him a paraduma red heifer. Why? Because the red heifer, the mitzvah of everything that's involved in getting the ashes of the red heifer and the purification process that involves the ashes of the red heifer is something that's beyond logic. You can look back in the class we had on Parshas Chukas. Something that's beyond logic. So what God was saying, the message is that the Jewish people keep this mitzvah even when it's very, very tough and it doesn't make any sense. In other words, what this guy did is exemplary, but the Jewish people keep it at a higher level even when it's beyond logic. Now, the question is asked not just on this, but in general, and there's always we want to find a good answer. Why is it? How come there's no bracha, no blessing said on the mitzvah of honoring parents? How come we don't say Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvayis v'tzivanu al kibud aveim? How come we don't say a blessing just as we make a blessing on other mitzvot, other commandments? We say a blessing on putting on tefillin. We say a blessing on lighting Shabbat candles. How come we don't say a blessing on the mitzvah of honoring parents? The Hasidic answer is that if there be a blessing involved, a chassid, he first goes to the mikvah, he puts on a gartel, and by the time that happens, the parent, it's already too late. You missed out on the mitzvah. But that's just tongue in cheek. The Sfas Emes says, interestingly, says we don't say a blessing because we don't need to say vetzivanu and he commanded us. It's just part of being human is to honor your parents. You don't need a commandment. As we said, the commandment is deeper, right, than just menschlichkeit, than just being nice. That's what he says. We wouldn't say, blessed are you, Lord our God, who sanctified it with his commandments and commanded us to honor the parents. What do you mean commanded us? You would just honor the parents just for being a human being. A normal human being wants to reciprocate, give back, give thanks, and so on and so forth. And to wrap up, this is also what they say. How come there's no blessing on the recitation of the Haggadah on Pesach and Passover? Passover is a big night. We make blessings on different things during the night. We have the blessing of the Kiddush, the cup of wine right at the beginning of Kaddish. We have the blessing on the matzah, which is a special blessing, not just hamotzi. We have the blessing on the maror, the bitter herbs. How come there's no blessing on telling over the Haggadah? How come there's no blessing on the mitzvah of retelling the story of the Exodus? Good question. So the answer is along these lines that you don't make a blessing on it because the whole Haggadah, the whole story of how we went down to Egypt in the Exodus is showing gratitude to God. So that's not something you're commanded to do. That's something that is natural to do. If you're a healthy person, you want to say thank you. Hope you enjoy the class. Comments, questions, concerns, drop me a comment and send us an email, rabbinewfoundland@gmail.com. Again, I'm Rabbi Chernitsky, Director of Chabad in Newfoundland. See you. Same place, same time. God willing, next week, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Newfoundland time, with a parsha of the week. Have a wonderful end of the week. Early Shabbat